Hello everyone and welcome to this series on learning SQL Server, which is from Microsoft. It's an enterprise database management system. In this video we're going to learn where to download SQL Server and how to install it. So let's get going. As you can see on the screen, I actually have already gone to the website to download SQL Server, and to get it you just go to Downloads right here, and gives you the screen that I had already. And down below, if you want to have SQL Server on premises, you can go ahead and click Download Now. You can download a free specialized edition, which is the one that we want, which is Developer. I've already downloaded this, so if you take a look at my Downloads folder right here, it is sitting right there. As you can see, it's a very small executable. Obviously SQL Server is not that small, but what this does, this gives us the option to install it or download the ISO image. I'm going to double click this to run it. I'm going to say yes here. And here it's loading the Developer Edition. Now, something you have to know about the Developer Edition, that it has all the features of the Enterprise Edition, which is a full version of SQL Server, but it's not licensed for being used in a production environment. But it's great to work with it because it does give you the ability to work with all the features of SQL Server without limitation. So you can learn it very well, experiment with it, and then do whatever you learn in the production environment. I do have to point out that in order to install SQL Server, in this case 2019, which is the latest edition, you do need a server product, or you need Windows 10 Professional Edition to install it. I am installing it on a virtual machine, which is a Windows 10 machine. This does not work on Windows 7. If you have earlier versions of Windows, this may not work. Notice the options that I have is Basic. Select Basic Installation to install the engine basically with default configuration. You can select Custom. To the custom installation of both of these will actually download the files from the internet and install it, or I can actually just download the ISO option, which is what I want to do right now. You can see there's the ISO version uncompressed. There's a compressed version of it, which is for whatever reason actually larger. I am going to download it to my downloads folder right here. So I'm going to click download right here. So as you can see, the file is being downloaded. I am just pausing my recording while this download is going on. We are almost done with the download right here. It's going fairly fast. So once it finishes downloading, we are going to tap into the ISO image and start the installation process. SQL Server installation is going to be probably a bit strange if you've never installed it before. It doesn't look like your typical installation of an application on Windows. You'll see why in just a moment. Okay, so our download is completed. It's just verifying the integrity of the file right now. Download successful. I am going to go ahead and open that folder, which is my download folder. You can see this right here. I'm just going to double click the ISO image, and there is my collection of installation files. I am going to double click Setup to start the setup process. Say yes. Now this only installs the database sys engine, more or less, and we will have to install the interface, the management interface, which is a separate program. So here we are with SQL Server. As you can see, this is the installation page that you get. They've divided into these various options, how to plan for the installation. I'll let you go through that if you like yourselves. Notice that they give you lots of good ideas. I want to go to installation, and even installation itself has several pieces to it. Now, we want to install a new SQL Server standalone installation or adding features to an existing installation. Then we want to install the SQL Server Management Tools, which is a separate download, which I've already downloaded. As you can see, there are other options too. Later on in this series, we will also look at reporting services, which is again a separate installation, separate download, and SQL Server Data Tools, which is yet another separate installation, which we'll take a look at. But for now, I'm going to start basically the standalone installation and wait for the prompt to come up for me to click Next. It is a developer edition. If you had an enterprise key or standard key, you could put that in here. So I'm going to go with a special free edition, which is developer. I accept the terms. SQL Server does a couple of checks. This one went without a hitch. Would you like to update or check for updates? I'm going to skip on that for the time being and click Next. Then over here it does some more collection of the files, and it's going to run probably another check for us. It is a fairly long setup process, so do not be discouraged. And once the actual copying of the files start, I will pause my video. Okay, so this is going into installation mode. So as you can see, SQL Server ran a set of additional checks, and there's a warning for Windows Firewall basically saying that the port for SQL Server, which is 1433, is being blocked by Windows Firewall, which is okay. We don't need to worry about that right now. I will cover that later when we talk about setting it up on the server, and I will actually show you. Now, this is a very important screen about what features you want to install, and people who are novice in SQL Server have a tendency to check everything. They go around and check everything here, completely unnecessary. The one thing that you need is the database engine. Really, anything else over here is additional that you don't need right now. We might be looking at in future videos some of these other features. I will install the client connectivity, tools connectivity, which would allow me to install some additional tools for allowing SQL Server to work using TCP/IP. And that's about it. That's all I want to do right now. There's really nothing else I want to do. I'm going to click Next. Remember, you can always come back and run the installation process and add anything that you want later. So those are my selections, the engine and some connectivity tools. Let's wait for it to prompt us for the next thing that we want. What is the name of this? I'm going to go with the default instance. Now you can install multiple copies of SQL Server on the same machine, and each one will get an instance name. The default instance is MS SQL Server. If you had additional instances installed, they would show up down here. Each instance must have its own name. I'm going to go with the default because I have no other instances installed. Click Next. The next screen is going to ask us about some server configurations, which is very important. So this is another area of SQL Server that people make mistakes. I do want my SQL Server agent to be set to automatic. SQL Server agent allows you to run automated tasks such as jobs. The database engine obviously has to run, otherwise it wouldn't be working, period. SQL Server Browser allows us to actually browse for other SQL Server instances on the network. I like to set that also to automatic. I'm going to click next. Over here, very important screen. It's saying, would you like the authentication to be Windows authentication, which is passed through? In other words, if you have an account in SQL's, if you have created a Windows account on your machine, which I have several on this machine, and they are allowed to work with SQL Server. Once you log into Windows, SQL Server allows you in. You can also work in mixed mode, which is SQL Server authentication and Windows. So this one allows the Windows authentication, but you can also create individual accounts within SQL Server itself. This is something that if you need to change later, you can, but it does require that SQL Server be stopped and restarted. There is, by default, an SA account in SQL Server, which is a super administrator account, or system administrator as it says, and you can add a password for it right here. I'm going to leave it at Windows authentication mode and deal with this later. Also, who do you want the SQL Server administrators to be? I want to add the current user, which I'm logged in with my student account. So I'm going to make the student account be in there. I will also add the built-in administrator account. Then check names and add it. Click next. And here we are, ready to install. So I'm going to click the install button, and then I'm going to stop the recording. And when the installation is finished, I will pick up the recording. Okay, as you can see, my installation has been completed. It's always an excellent idea after a major installation like this to reboot the machine. And this is how you install SQL Server.